downloading, it's preparing the live stream, and it will probably let us know when we're live. I am serious though, if you do remember what you were saying about
Oh yeah,
Coachella.
I was waiting for the moment.
Oh, you were like, I'm ready. Let's click record. Let's go.
Um,
All
Although
right,
my
it's
dog just
taking
broke into
just a
the room.
moment. Oh, it's true. We are live.
Yay. So anyway, I was saying we were thinking about Coachella and we were thinking about the color of pomegranates, and I was thinking about, wow, all these Coachella performances are so they're just like, especially the Sabrina one, it's just like it was like tableau after tableau after tableau. It was like all these different visuals going on and all these different like things that you like couldn't be able to process, and a lot about poetry and a lot about trauma. And I feel like that is also the color of pomegranates from the um, which is a lot. It's like a very kind of like experimental film, and it's about a poet who's a rebel, and then it's just like basically non-narrative. It's just like gorgeous tableau, different tableaus, like imagery, like abstract imagery, and it's just like rapid fire that you can't even hope to process. So I was drawing that line to the Coachella.
That's literally Coachella. The color
That's
pomegranates was
literally
made
Coachella.
for this weekend.
So, and it's also the wasteland, as I'm saying.
Oh,
We're
yes.
all about the highbrow, lowbrow situation.
Say more about the Wasteland because I know you've been like diving into that. That's T.S. Eliot. Say
Yeah.
more.
Well, I was been meaning to read it for a while because I was like, to read people, hold on. Wanted to read people also obsessed with Dante, and he is one of those people. So then I wanted to read that, and then like my mom happened to get me a just she was just like out on a trip and she went to a bookstore and she got me like a copy of it. So I was like, no, I really have to read it. And it's like a short poem, but it was I was talking about this with Mari, like the fact that it's like a very heavily referential poem, and people are like, it's full of all these different references to all these different myths and literature and various things, and it's like written in like there's like random quotes from German and Italian and French, and like you have to basically have had the exact same education. People are like, some people think it's very snobby because you have to have
Mhm.
the exact references that he has to even be able to like understand anything that's happening. And we were saying that's kind of like a lot of these um Coachella performances, and all this art is so heavily referential that it's like, well, if you haven't watched these like 20 films, you had no idea what was happening. Like,
That is
so,
so good. That is so what is happening with so much art, you know? Like if
right.
you are a cinephile, understanding Sabrina Carpenter's work is not going to have the same heft and weight. You're not going to be able
You,
to enjoy the depth of it, I suppose, you know?
yeah, I mean, and there's all this stuff you can access from whatever realm. I don't think that it's you have to. You can access
Sure.
it on
Yeah.
different levels, but it's just so funny. It was just like hilarious to me because it was just like, oh, all these things we've been talking about of like Lost Highway being the David Lynch film that we were just like, oh, we should probably watch this. And then it was just like, Sabrina was like, what if I just made that the intro to my Coachella performance? It's so
Which
crazy.
I had forgotten when I was like, oh my gosh, Sabrina's doing Lost Highway.
Right.
That 1 year ago at Coachella, I was like, oh my
Right.
God, Gaga's doing Lost Highway, which was, to be clear, the catalyst for me saying, fine, I will finally watch this film that is scaring me.
Right.
And the reason why I extrapolated Gaga, which is very different than Sabrina's clear motif of Lost
Right.
Highway.
It's like literally
Um,
a remake.
it's literally a remake. Whereas Gaga's was much more abstract, and I'm not even sure intentional. But uh, one of the prime filming locations for Lost Highway was the Armagosa Valley outside of Death Valley in the Mojave Desert, which is the same desert as Coachella, if we're gonna just keep tying it around. But in the Armagosa Valley, there was a dancer, and she like created an opera house, and it was like the opera house in the desert was what it was called, and she was like a classically trained ballerina from New York who just like gave it all away to like live in the middle of nowhere, like truly, like no town. It's just like desert wasteland, if that's how you do the desert. Um, but truly, like a valley of life, one of the most beautiful places in all of California, in my opinion. It's teeming with wildflowers and fish. There's like endemic fish that live there and only there. Anyway, she created an opera house in the desert. And so when Gaga said that, I was like, there's literally only one opera house in the desert. And it's where Lost Highway was filmed. So a little more abstract, acute, hard to say. Not much of Gaga's performance outside of her having an opera house in the desert was Lost Highway. The opera house in the desert isn't even Lost Highway. It was just the filming location that only somebody who was deeply obsessed with the lore of the Mojave would know, which is me. But yeah, 2 years in a row for Lost Highway.
And they were both.
And that guy was me.
And they're both, both the Gaga Cella, Mayhem Cella they are both arguably about, like psychological fracturing and reintegration, which is a big theme of Lost Highway too. So
it always comes back around.
we're, yeah, we're all
But I
out
mean, I
here.
really, yeah, go ahead.
I said we're all truly out here doing parts work of various levels, but
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, that's what I think so much of all of the art that we're looking at is. And sometimes I'm like, is that the mirror ball facet I'm looking through because it's applicable to my life? And that's like the whole point. That's the like beauty of art is that we don't have to know. It's just what is the catharsis for us that matters, in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's ample evidence in the text to support that, but yeah. But I think you
We
also
love a textual evidence.
it's yeah, when you have Susan Sarandon giving an existential monologue about your past life, I think there is some self-reflection inherent in the work. But yeah,
Yes.
no, it's just funny. I mean, yeah, all the things you get from art, you could get anything from anything, and I think it's valid. But yeah, but I do think there is, yeah, implicitly a lot of that goes into this work, and the girlies are mad.
Oh, the girls are mad. Say more if you will.
The girls and Justin Bieber, apparently.
You know what I'm gonna say about gender if you want to talk about
We
my
will talk.
boy.
I know. Everyone's saying it. It's okay.
No,
We're
no,
like, oh,
no.
well,
No, no. I
oh,
don't think I'm saying
oh,
anything related to what anyone else is saying.
oh,
I
okay.
love that Pisces cat down bad, which is hilarious because he was not part of my childhood. I'm older than him,
Right.
and my first memory of him is working at summer camp and tiny 8-year-olds singing "Baby, baby, baby." Ah! Like
Yeah.
that was my introduction to Justin, and now I'm obsessed because that person I don't even know how to explain. It might just be that he's a Pisces. It might be that Yummy was the first music video that I was like, whoa, is the industry like really not okay? Like
Yeah.
I'm not sure my obsession with Justin Bieber. Um, and I don't have to. Actually, you know what? It goes back to the blogs. Okay, it goes back to Tumblr. It goes back to lesbians who look like Justin Bieber.
Yes.
We're getting the clear picture of my history and my love. I do think that, well, listen, I support the idea that Justin is getting, my understanding is he's like getting paid the most and is just standing on stage playing YouTube videos and old hits. And I understand the misogyny in that.
Yes.
I hope, like a lot of the things we're seeing, the cis heterofatalism of Sabrina Carpenter, etc., is that there will be a meta commentary on it. Not necessarily from Justin, but sometimes I do think that things are presented and then the audience, us, are part of it, like
Mm-hmm.
are part of the narrative, part of the story. Um, So yeah, do I want to watch Addison doing beat poetry and like a full out performance? Yes. Do I understand on some level. Obviously, I don't know what the fuck Justin's doing, but I do feel like the art he's presenting is understood and digestible by me. And there's double standard. Yes, and we can like have both.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. For sure, for sure. Yeah. I know. I
Ah,
watched half of the Addison this morning.
oh, God bless.
God bless.
Visionary,
I
true
have to.
visionary.
Yes.
You have to
And I
what?
felt bad because she was giving like the crowd was giving like nothing, and I felt so bad. But
Yeah, because they were there for Justin,
yeah,
which is like, where was I? Where's the Venn diagram of Addison and Justin fans
I
jumping in
know.
their living room?
You should have been there. They kept panning to this one person that knew all the words, and I was like, God bless this one person who's here for
God
Addison.
bless. Truly.
But and she
The
was
way
giving.
she, yeah, yeah.
No, I felt she was like giving everything, and her dancers were giving everything, and she kept being like, "I'm giving blood, sweat, and tears out here, and I'm feeling it's not reciprocated." It's like I love you. Oh my God.
Just like to name it, to be like, I know you're here for Justin, and I'm still gonna like give you a
Right.
show.
And yeah, it's very much like the rage, of that was interesting. There was just like, yeah,
Say more on the
thinking,
rage,
well,
or
yeah, I
yeah,
was
yeah.
thinking a lot about like the sort of like aggressive hypersexualization of both her and Sabrina that feels like
Mm,
very like vindictive and like almost it's like fun, but it's also just like I just feel a lot of like rage simmering beneath it. And
yeah.
in a way it's like reappropriating it because I feel like it's sort of like a extreme camp version of that because that was what they felt like either pigeonholed into or they have some sort of trauma around or something. So it's just like, okay, well now I'm gonna do this up, like turning the volume up to 11 to quote Spinal Tap.
Mm.
Uh, and
God.
like, I don't know, there's a lot to it. It's just, yeah, it's
Okay,
interesting.
you made me think about how both Sabrina and Addison do a little like call out to their dancers by gender. And
Hmm.
it's interesting because Sabrina is like, and to all the girls, and like just really lays it on. And like, well, I guess, oh wait, Sabrina was talking about the, her audience.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then Addison's talking about her dancers.
right.
But what's interesting is that, Sabrina lays it on for the girls and is like, I guess the boys tried. So whatever, gender binary aside, that's okay commentary. And then Addison inverts it, talking about her dancers, and starts with boys, and it seems like she's about to be like yes, and the boys, and then it like stops, and there's not, and then she's like, and my girls, and it's like, oh damn, like you flipped that, you surprised, it was like, oh, where are you going
Mm.
with this? And then she has this like, after she says the girls, they like launch into this like, I believe I remember correctly, it's the Aquamarine set, and they break into the Aquamarine like breakdown dance, which to me is like a very sexual, gay. Aquamarine was the song that made me feel confirmed that Addison is gay. And yeah, Spring Breaks Loose, Marine, Aquamarine, March, Equinox, etc. Um, yeah, I feel like at some point we're gonna have to do, not necessarily, nobody has to go on the Addison journey with me. I will be, I've been, last year at Coachella, I wrote some things about Addison, some reflections, about how she's kind of like a lightning rod for queer girlies. Like, I think she's
Mm.
redirecting a lot of like weird, like homophobia away from them. And I think she's like a testing ground to see how to like navigate that with people.
Mm.
Um, and yeah, I've only seen that continue to be true in the last year with her. But yeah, I'm perpetually surprised by people who are performance artlers who don't see her art it's okay if you don't like her music. I don't particularly like Sabrina Carpenter's music, although I will say the disco influence that's been coming through is really keeping me here. But the storytelling, like, what do
Right.
you mean she was doing beat poetry at Coachella? Like,
Hilarious. Yeah,
hilarious, genius.
yeah. That I know. I was like, that made me lured me, and I was like, okay, I have to watch this, even despite having never really gotten around to listening to her album of Edison. But I was just like, this, and it was like such an interesting comparison with Sabrina because it was like a lot the same, but
Mm-hmm.
like obviously like lower budget and stuff, but very like similar of like this.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the same aggression I can feel from like the showgirl era too for Taylor. It's just like, oh, you wanted the showgirl. Like you like she says, you know what you wanted and boy you got her. Like what if we turned the showgirl up to
Mm-hmm.
oh, this is like now she's like a vengeful spirit who's
Mm-hmm. Which I think we've seen. I don't know if Vengeful Spirit is what I would describe in Gaga's Coachella with the two Queen of
right.
Hearts, that chess piece.
Yeah.
But I was reminded of that in Addison has Maddie Ziegler was a guest star at Coachella for her and portrayed like a similarly a similar like white and black counterpart. Like Gaga has these two players and she plays one. We
Right.
saw the same thing with Addison in this like dance performance.
Ooh. Okay, I didn't get to that part yet.
Ooh, exciting! I didn't
Woo!
recognize Maddie at first, to be clear, but she's wearing white, and they have like this duet, and it's spectral. I will say, like you said, like spirit, and I was like, that that was spirit related.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, well, even her coming down when she entered on her like stage, she was like sort of impaled on this circular
Mm,
like stage, which could call to mind like a circus, like the knife throwing in a circus, or also it made me think of like the Wheel of Karma, or like,
mhm,
when you see like Shiva set against these like mandalas, or I don't know, it made me
mhm.
think of that, like.
Which we've seen that spinning circle like so much. We've seen it in on Taylor's Red Tour. We saw it in As It Was by Harry Styles. We saw it in the Paul McCartney Who
Mm-hmm.
Cares music video with Emma Stone. Um,
Yeah.
so to see that kind of like person pinned on a wheel, yeah, I don't know what it is, but it's something there. We got a comment from the chat. Mari's coming in. Mari is saying Maddie was Spirit for Sia a while ago, and then at Coachella when Sia played, she brought out Kristen Wiig instead of Maddie Z. Oh, very interesting. Very, because I vaguely remember. Yes. Okay. So Maddie and Sia go back to Chandelier, I believe, is when Maddie had her breakout. Um, and then they collaborated again in that film that was not well received that I didn't see because of its reviews and commentary, but it was in which Maddie plays I don't remember all the details, but my understanding is that the character Maddie plays is autistic and it's supposed to be like an autistic portrayal, except Maddie's not autistic. So there was like a lot of pushback with that was pretty much when I was like, okay, I'm done like listening to Sia. And a lot of people were like, man, and I feel really bad for Maddie because she's literally just like a teen. I'm not sure exactly how old she was at this time, but like young, and it's like how do you like say no to Sia? Do you all the details of or all the nuance is what I'm saying. So yeah, I was intrigued to see that, yeah, her like presence and yeah. Mari's saying that like yes, there's like a problematic history, but the idea about like fixing the timeline, and Mari's also saying there's like a parallel fixing it with Addison, because Addison is her story is so fascinating to me, and I had no interest in TikTok celebrities at all. Like it just wasn't. I don't know. I feel new to the internet because I didn't have it for the peak of the pandemic. Like I lived in a rural area where I didn't have Wi-Fi or so phone service. So sometimes I'm like, I just like didn't even know what was happening on TikTok. But I will say that like the network of new romantics, etc., that we like look at is so important because Addison first came into my view in the studio with Charlie when she provided the scream on Von Dutch, which was the opening for the Brat era, which I think is like pretty significant. And I was like, who is this girly pop? Like, what do you mean Addison? The scream is like, I don't know, man. It unlocked something in me. I was like, hell yeah, Addison. Like, who are you? What's the deal? And like, again, Addison's done some problematic things. Like, I think the most wild thing to me was talking about like wanting to meet Trump or like being like, yeah, of course he's the president, which at the time was like, oh my God. And like, what are we doing here? And that was like it was before I felt more solidified in the idea that the New Romantics are doing something political. It really felt like a fringe idea for a long time. It felt really, yeah, like I felt unwell to be like, yeah, no, the pop stars are doing something political. Trust us. Um, but yeah, I wonder so much about like Katy Perry with that old prime minister dude and the MAGA Brittany Mahomes era trad wife of Taylor, like what are we doing? Which is to say, which is to say that somebody posted, the Jonas Brothers posted like a sign in Vancouver that had hope. And I was like, okay, so Taylor told us the key is in Vancouver, and if hope is Vancouver, then hope is the key. So, like, is there some sort of like hope thing I should be looking into queer history? Well, Harvey Milk gave a hope speech, and the like core of that speech is like we have to have conversations and we have to like have relationships with people in order to change prejudice. And it was like, yeah, that is true. So I don't know what's going on in the trad wife era, but I trust that we are bending the arc of the moral universe towards justice.
All right. Yeah, and I've been thinking about that a lot in the past week and stuff about like how do you have hope and like what does hope mean and both hope on like a macro scale and hope on a micro scale of just like day-to-day life and not getting too like gloom and doom about it and what's the role of art and what's the role of everything. Yeah, so yeah, I don't know, it's just which is yeah, part of why I was reading The Wasteland to tie it back of like thinking and thinking of
Yes.
like yeah, what sometimes reading depressing things can be hopeful and sometimes, it can just bring you down further. And I didn't even think it was the introduction was like, oh, this is so depressing, and I didn't even think it was that depressing. But it was in a way where it was like there's this firm phrase that begins a lot of it's like a poem that makes no sense because there's like a million different narrators and it's just like all over the place. But it has a lot to do with like processing the the emotional sort of processing of like that happened after World War One and how everyone was like, oh, like the veneer that we have with civil society has just been like erased. And the idea
Sounds familiar.
yeah, I know. It's like, oh, sounds relevant. Sounds relevant. Like, and it's a lot to do with like I was got interrupted by this by Sabrina's car by Sabrina's Coachella performance because I was reading this book that he was like, oh, he has all these footnotes in it, and he's like, well, and he's also a very problematic person. We don't have time to get into it right now.
There's just
But
so many problematic men in the world.
I feel like I should disclaim that while also not going too deep into it because I feel like there's also it's an interesting poem that has had a huge effect on the culture. So, just talking about this poem specifically. Yeah.
Well,
But he has like a book that he recommended and he was like, "Well, if you want to understand this poem, read these two books." And I was just like, "Noted." They sound fascinating anyway. And then the introduction person who was writing the introduction was like, "Actually reading these books like won't really help you understand."
oh my God. What was he on about?
I just love it. She was just like, even if people make a career out of like trying to hunt down every reference and trying to like make it be a cohesive whole, and she's like, that's such a fool's game. and it doesn't actually
Mm,
like get you anywhere with like the viscerality of the poem is like actually a lot what gets you more into the depth of it. But
mm.
I like the book. The one of them was The Golden Bough, which I had been meaning to read anyway, which is about like they're both sort of about like folklore and mythology across cultures and how it shifts, which is like my total jam anyway. So I was reading one about called From Ritual to Romance, and it was about talking about how like vegetation, life, death, rebirth rites kind of got transmuted into coded into allegory in like the Arthurian legends of like the Grail quest and stuff, and how there's a link between those two like dominant cultural myths. Um, and how a lot of like the searching for like how to restore the golden age has to do a lot with like actually the equinox and this
Cool.
idea that like the sacrifice of the year king or like the agricultural king, there's a tie between like the ruler and the fecundity of the land. And when the ruler's all messed up, that's why there is a wasteland. And I was like, sounds familiar.
Oh my God.
Um,
This is the all I have to say about that is that when Midnights came out, I was like, this is based on Cats, which is based on T.S. Eliot's work.
yes.
And
Midnight's is based on cats.
Midnights is based on Cats. And I've
How did this
never,
never come up?
well, because I've never explained it. It's just been
Okay,
my
I'm
little
here
pet
for it.
theory that I keep saying Midnights is based on Cats. And I just, you know, that's what the Daydream Show is for. Here we are.
That's here we are.
I
I
mean,
was
the basis for, sorry, go ahead.
I know I was cracking up that I don't know if this was Mari who wrote that, but who said like Sabrina's performance had all these incredible dogs in it, and someone wrote like this is cats but with dogs.
Yes,
I was
yes.
like,
I also said that, and then they were like, "Oh my God, same thing." Like a lot of people were like, "Oh, this is cats with dogs." So absolutely, absolutely. I mean, the biggest is that the biggest connection is in Cats, the song "Memory," and
yes,
Midnight's being about sleepless nights.
so true, so
Um,
true.
I mean, that's the essence of it. Maybe we'll have an episode fully on dissecting it a bit more, but
Right?
I do think that this idea that like, oh, T.S. Eliot was like writing other things. Like I think Taylor often does this where she's like, oh, I want you to look at Dead Poet Society, but like also, did you know that that director also had a lesbian movie called Picnic at Hanging Rock? Maybe you'd like that too. It's like, yeah, I love that, Taylor, and I never would have watched that
Right.
otherwise, So I think sometimes we like are to take the thing that's presented and rotate it until it's queered. And thinking about T.S. Eliot, and you were talking about like the visceral nature or like there needing to be some sort of like I can't remember exactly what you're saying of like an innate like drive.
Well, it has to do with like almost he had an essay about this with Dante too. It's like when you try to academize or like hyper intellectualize poetry, you're kind of missing the point.
Uh
Because poetry is meant to like give you a felt sense that like knocks you over rather than and it's fun to be like, "Oh, this is like a quote from a Dante and like part of Dante and like what would that mean?"
yeah.
But if you should be just you should be like bowled over by a feeling kind of.
Mm. Okay, go on this journey with me because that sentiment reminded me of a sentiment that was active around the time that T.S. Eliot was writing. I'm not sure exactly, but like within the like 50-year frame.
Hmm.
So culturally. Um, okay, so T.S. Eliot is writing these ideas of like, there needs to be some sort of embodied feeling. It's not an intellectual pursuit. At the same time, that a dancer is revolutionizing dance. This is Marta Beckett was the dancer in the Mojave. Now we're at Isadora Duncan, who was trained, was mentored by
Hmm.
goddess of Repture, Loie Fuller. And what's interesting about Isadora Duncan and the reason why I think it's very pertinent and timely. Isadora Duncan took ballet, much like Loie, took this art form and then queered it. Um, but Isadora Duncan was, I don't know how, like, Loie was like doing her own thing and she was like kind of aside, whereas I feel like Isadora was like, she made the weird thing mainstream. That's what it was, you know? Like Loie was off on the side doing this like weird queer art, and Isadora was like, is an innovator in contemporary dance. But her whole thing was like, we are thinking about dance wrong. Ballet is not like a right form of dance because it's an intellectual property and it's about holding here and there. And it's, you know, she believed that ballet was like causing muscle deformities. Um, and so, yeah, she really advocated and created a school and found like a financer to train like thousands of young people in her contemporary style of dance that was not about this is how you dance, but this is how you feel and move your body, which is it my understanding the only Western modern contemporary person who had like a body connection with dance in the Western world. Like when I think about a more visceral form of dance, I think about like Ethiopian dance class I took, you know, like that was
Right.
like non-Western styles of embodiment. So very, I don't know, I'm just thinking about like T.S. Eliot and all the new romantics and this idea of like this embodied feeling and like, I don't know, I'm autistic. I intellectualize everything. So maybe it's just really pertinent to me, you know? But I do feel like I'm constantly on a pursuit to like have a more like in my body feeling.
Right. We have two Virgo moons on this spot, on this radio show, so we do intellectualize everything. Yes, Chloe and Mari says, and the way that Isadora Duncan betrayed Chloe by saying, I don't know her, basically. Yeah, that was a betrayal. But yeah, the I was so struck by watching that, like Obsessed with Light, about how Loie was kind of like, what if we like we're the dance like what if we made a dance that's completely not about the body and it's all about like the body's effect on these silks. But like Loie wasn't the star. It wasn't about Loie's personality or magnetism or body or, you know, sexuality or anything. It was just like watch me whip around these silks and like that will give you sort of a transcendent feeling. And then there's an argument like, was that even dancing or was it like puppetry or like what was that? Versus like, definitely Isadora Duncan was more of like the star and it was much more about an embodied feeling, which can be sensual and all of that. But yeah, I think that was just interesting. It's like it was almost talking about like the subconscious, like in his essay about Dante, he was talking about like people separate Dante the philosopher from Dante the poet, and they actually like are inextricably bound. And it's kind of like the philosophy is being conveyed and working on you, even if you don't like intellectualize it, which
Mm-hmm.
I think is a lot about what's going on with this like performance art thing. And then so it's like how,
Absolutely.
you know, what's the subtle level on which you can influence people's minds without um by, you know, but you want to have it have some direction, but also people are going to take it in their consciousness wherever their consciousness is, so it's sort of like a flawed thing with art. And like how do you combat propaganda? You need to make it like subtle enough that it
Mhm.
is kind of like convincing the mind. So there's a lot going on, but it's just
Which,
yeah.
oh, go ahead. Go.
Oh no. You can go ahead.
That just brought me back to Mary Shelley husband, Percy,
Yes.
who had all sorts of little faggotry love affairs with different poet men.
Oh yeah.
Um, he was the first person, though, who presented the idea of poets as the unknown, unacknowledged legislators of the world, and that like art is what shifts culture. And then law will be made about what the culture has decreed, basically. And so Taylor, like going back to Coleridge with the albatross and the lakes poets, with folklore, like to me, that was such a direct connection to this idea of poets of that era. And poets of that era were talking about how can we shift culture so that we have um, yeah, what we need. And the idea of like, I don't know, the tortured poets department and then Addison with the poets at Coachella. I'm like, oh, we really are doing poets as legislators. Like, okay, all right, got it.
Yeah. And beat poets always makes me think of like Allen Ginsberg and all of that.
Hmm.
And that
William
poem like
Burroughs.
yeah, Howl and all
Yeah.
of that. But
Mm.
yeah, it's interesting to see about and even learning about T.S. Eliot being a modernist like Virginia Woolf in that modernist movement of that quote unquote lost generation. And in a way that was a backlash to like the romantic era because it was saying like no, now the culture we've had this like massive just giant thing happen which was like World War One and it's like a disillusionment and it's like the consciousness has been so traumatized, like the global consciousness has been so traumatized by this that we like actually need to reinvent poetry because and like make
Hmm.
it more a stream of consciousness and make it less abstractified and make it more yeah, like in almost a world like coming from an absurdist point of view, like where like what if we start from the place where like actually maybe there isn't meaning or maybe there we're like working back from an apocalypse kind of thing which they Wordsworth almost felt about he was him and Coleridge were writing these lyric ballads in response to the failure of the French Revolution. So it's just like poetry as a response to political crisis and then like
Mm.
someone else and then like a whole other like shift of poetry to take up that as the culture keeps like as these different crises keep unfolding, they're like, we need a different poetry. So
This is why we're going back to disco. Disco's the only thing that can save us.
yeah.
Oh no. That is
As
yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, as Kesha said, and her song "Only Love Can Save Us Now," which
Yeah.
is a great song. Uh,
In which love is disco, exactly.
yeah, but no, and yeah, thinking about, I know I'm just fascinated by all the time loops of like, why are there so many 70s references that we've been having since like Midnight's and everything, and no one's
Hmm.
fully explained them to me, and I want explanation.
I mean,
But
if you get me started,
I
I'll go
feel
on a
like
rant about
I
Leon
feel like
Russell.
right. No, Leon Russell for sure. And then also, well, I still need to listen to, but, and then also I think having to do with like the military industrial complex being codified in the 70s and like all of
Mm.
that.
It goes
Um,
back to the Suez
we
Crisis,
were
I'm telling
telling,
ya.
we are telling people and they're not listening.
I mean, I never expected anyone to get serious about the Suez Crisis because it seems so outlandish.
No, it's
And
so
now
real.
it's so real. And it's like there's so many things like that. Which is to say, if you are feeling like you have a really out there theory, you are in good company. Give it a few years. We'll have you on the show because I don't know. That's just what happens. Like, I don't know. Anna was talking about, what it means when a pop star is engaging with you and how like unmooring that can feel. And I've watched it
Right.
affect people mentally. And so I've talked a lot about
Mm-hmm.
the ethics of it. And yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I just throwing a life raft out to anyone who is in the big great sea alone, like get on the board. She's referencing all sorts of things and she's been doing this. So you're
Yeah.
you're in you're in good company and a long long line
Well, it was
of
so
gaylors.
interesting.
Sorry,
Yeah,
go ahead.
literally. I mean, the pattern recognition can be sent into overdrive, and then in a world that hates pattern recognition, they're like, "Oh no, you're pattern recognizing too hard." And I'm like, "Sorry for having a brain that maps things. Oh my God." There's a difference between that and like losing touch with reality, and it's just like, "No, I'm just on pattern recognition overdrive, homie."
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah,
And
I
it's
was
important to know when that overdrive is no longer helpful. You know what I
right.
mean? Because you can be
It's like,
right and it can be harming your life. Like if you
yeah,
need to go outside, if you need
totally.
to drink a glass of water, like you get
Yeah.
to take care of your physical body.
Right, so true. And I think I like that point that like MC had made about like when it feels like you feel frantic about putting one certain piece into place or that you need like that. to like have some sort of thesis or like there's some sort of time crunch or something, that's what I think when it can get like unhealthy because it's just like there's no urgent like there is urgency, but there's also no urgency. And it's just like it's good to step back and be like, I'm kind of doing this for fun, but I'm also kind of doing this for the community project that we just have found ourselves in, but we don't have to feel the urgency or the onus to really do anything more than what feels good. So
Totally. I'm
that
thinking
is
about Rachel reminding me that like there is no time pressure
right.
and everyone here is already so ahead of the curve. Anything that you feel like is time, like you have time. You have so much time. Even if, things like move and you're like, oh my God, she came out. Wow. You still have time. Like
Oh
there's no
yeah.
end point where it's like, well, I didn't post my theory. It's like too late. It's like if you have the theory, baby, let's hear it. Like I don't know.
Yeah. Well, and I
Yeah,
was thinking a lot about this with like I need to go back and rewatch that Susan Sarandon monologue
so
because
good.
I know I like that was so funny. I was watching it and I'm very interested by this idea that she said about like she looks like and similar to like Rodrigo's new album title is like she looks like she's having so much fun, but she's not actually there. Which the
Mm,
Olivia title being like you look so sad for a girl who's supposed to be in love or something. Um, and I'm fascinated by that idea of like the sort of fracturing that goes on through performance and like is there a light like she was talking a lot about the light that comes out in performance, but there's also like a lot of darkness that goes into it and like I was like, well, if she's not having fun being a pop star and I'm not having fun being a plebeian, like who's driving this bus? Who's having fun? You know? And that's sort of it's kind of like bringing it up again back to the Hunger Games of like the victors being sort of aspirational. And it's like actually they're having a far like they're more traumatized than we are. And it's like, but I'm also traumatized. So it's like
yeah.
I'm also not having a great time in a completely different way. So it's like then what is the sort of aspiration for life? You know, if we're taking away that idea of like
Mm,
as Addison said very sarcastically, money is everything. If we know that money isn't everything, but it obviously does help with like basic needs, that's like a whole thing of like you could have infinite money be miserable, or you could have no money and be miserable. And I'm just like, I don't know which
mm.
one to pick. But I mean, I guess I do, but I guess it's like good to hold on to your soul however you can.
That's it. That's the thing. It's like, oh, so many people be like, fuck it. Like, if I'm going to be sad, like, at least I can survive. And it's like, do you understand what horcruxing your soul does?
No, we
Like,
don't want to fuck with that.
it is far worse than we can imagine. That's all I know. All I
Yeah,
know is that
literally.
it is horrors beyond my comprehension. Thank God. Because I think it would have killed me. I feel
Yeah,
so
it kills a lot
certain.
of people,
So many people,
you know?
which is
And
insane.
it's so crazy. I'm just like, what? Like, why are we in this timeline, man?
Which I think
Of
is like the first step, if we're gonna get out of this timeline, if we're gonna end capitalism, capitalism relies on the deification of celebrity and other people. And we have to be able to undeify them. And the only way we can do that is if we see them as living in as fucked up of a situation as we are.
if
And
not
that's what
more.
I think
Yeah.
yeah, if not way more.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
and like yeah, well, I was gonna go on a whole rant, but if we're
No,
on
it's okay. It's okay. We have about 5 more minutes to rant it up. So if there's any last thoughts or if anyone has any
well,
call-ins from the audience, now's your
yeah.
time. But no
No,
rush,
I
no
mean
pressure.
this is very relevant, but it's just something that, I was thinking a lot about with my life because I had like I continual like sort of existential crises about that, like about do we do like wanting to maintain your soul within trying to function within the reins of capitalism and all of that and just like and I sometimes it comes up that there's a lot I've been thinking a lot about like the internalized stigmatization of not thriving in capitalism and how like insane that is, but it's so
Mm.
easy to fall into with like,
Mhm.
especially for I think millennials, I think because of the millennial um more so was sort of like, oh, well, you go to college and then you're gonna thrive. Whereas the other generations after that haven't even had that like hope, so it's been less devastating.
This is
Um,
exactly what I'm saying.
right?
The false carrot has been, whew.
So, but it's just like I carry in that, like I carry so much shame around that. And I'm just like, why,
Mm.
girl? Um, like the world is so fucked up. And I just had like another sort of like job I was trying to apply to that I thought maybe would be good, and it was like actually horrifying. And I was just like, oh, okay. Like it was so I was just like, well, it was like that meme of like woman loses additional bit of hope that she didn't know she
Mhm,
even had. And I
mhm,
was just like
mhm.
just
Me
like
finally getting a university job, thinking I've done it, I'm set.
right?
Oh, you're a
Literally.
hedge fund? A Zionist hedge fund. Oh. Oh, you're actively giving me COVID, like you're contagious and you're coughing on me? My
Oh yeah.
supervisor.
Oh yeah.
Anyway, fuck
Anyway,
Zionism. That's what I have to say.
it's
ACAB,
just
fuck Zionism.
totally
Forever.
forever. And yeah, the hedge fundification of universities, like literally.
Right, right. You and I, we are meant to be professors. We are meant to be teaching.
We
We're
are.
meant to have, that's why we're here.
That's why we're Flopzilla,
Yeah.
economically, because it's just like, you know, it's just, I'm feeling a lot of late, and I feel like almost, I don't know, I was thinking about it, and I know it's not just me, it's just like everyone I know is just like unemployed or underemployed or like is such a great person and so has so much to give to the world, and it's just like I think I don't know why we feel such internalized shame about being underemployed when we're literally like in the wasteland. And
We're
I'm
in
just
the
like,
wasteland.
we're in the wasteland. And like, and it's just like I don't know why I think it's just like the capitalism got so deep that it's just like we got into this internalization like, oh, it's my failure that I don't like have a house. And I'm just like, it's literally has nothing to do with me.
Well, and it's hard to frame it like, I'm just thinking about how, like, there are people my age who are buying houses.
Right.
And those people, for me, fall into one of two places. They are either living on the Canadian border in far north rural Minnesota, where I used to live,
Mm. Mm-hmm.
an old mining town. So housing is accessible.
Right.
Um, or you've sold your soul to a biotech firm in San Francisco,
Mm-hmm.
and well, you're not buying in San Francisco either. You're moving to where
Literally.
I grew up in the suburbs of the Bay Area, the glorious pastoral rolling hills, and saying, whoa, we should build here. Get out of my hometown. Anyway, this is not a rant about San Francisco techies, but it always will be.
It
It,
always, I mean, it is.
it is. It really
It is.
is.
Let's admit it.
So
Um,
yeah, enjoy your fractured soul. And the only solution, and this is the part that really gets me. And I don't know how we're gonna come back from this. But the thing that gets me is that when your soul is fractured, you fracture your community. And when your community is fractured, it fractures the land. And that is why
we have the wasteland.
that's why we have the wasteland.
That's
Why we have the
literally, so that's why. Yeah. Which is apparently from, yeah, that like Arthurian legend or which goes back before Arthur, but gotta read that book, but I got simply distracted by Sabrina. But yeah, I so believe that. I so believe that, like,
there's there's this place near where I live in just north of San Francisco called the Marin Headlands along the Pacific coast. Like the Golden
Mm-hmm.
Gate goes right into it. And that whole area, it's like both San Francisco, the Presidio, it's all old war, like military bases, both World War One and Two. And I don't know how to explain this. I used to work there. I had a couple different jobs in the Headlands, um, teaching kids, and I don't know how to explain it other than it feels like the soul of the land has been carved out because
Ooh.
there's all these underground bunkers, um, like in the earth. And I've taught children, and I've taught teachers how to teach there. And I had this like feeling, but one time I had a teacher come to me and we were doing a check-in, like how's class? How's it going? We were running an outdoor school out there. And she's like, I can't get over this feeling that the land, like the soul has been like carved out of the land. And I was like, that's exactly what it feels here. There's like literal holes in this earth that have not been restored. And it's really hard to have like a productive, positive teaching environment for like young people in that space. But
Ooh.
most of Marin County like goes there and like never thinks about it, or like so much of California does their like outdoor science school trip at the Point Bonita YMCA there. And it's like the World War One bunkers that were dug by these kids like great grandparents. They had no idea the effect that it would have on our like learning experience here today. And all I have to say is like, I don't know, man, we don't have anything if we don't have this earth. And right now, I'm very tapped into what's happening in the Big Bend area, a place I used to live and work, and the wall that they're trying to put up there. Um, so yeah, this is a call to remind people that, there's a lot of causes in this world and none of them exist if we don't have earth. So
Yes, literally.
that's it,
It's
and
like,
maybe, and that can look like a million things, like maybe you're just like, I don't know, my mom's teaching me how to like caretake tomatoes this summer, or maybe it's like going and standing in front of a chain link fence. Like, I don't know what it is for you, but I'm sending a prayer that we all find our thing to help preserve what matters.
yes, the
Oh,
soul of the earth. Yeah, I think I mean, I just, yeah, think about that all the time, as I'm so lucky to live in like such a naturally beautiful place. Um, but it, where there is a lot of like nature preserved and stuff, but it's just like, yeah, I know exactly how you feel. That's how I feel about like Boston. It's like the Seaport District is just like it used to be these beautiful like tidal flats, and they're just like, what if we turned it into soulless like biotech companies that are just like have these fake, it has like fake culture, these fake like outdoor markets, and it's just like so like inchitified and so Disneyfied. It's just crazy.
oh, yeah. That's the way it is. That's the way it is. Made me think about my first time working in national park, and the first thing at the staff training was, you don't know it, but you just signed up to work at Disneyland. And I was like, I'm in the Redwoods, sir. What do you mean? And it's like, well, people come to visit, and sometimes they expect that animatronic ranger Disneyland experience, which is to say that like go see your public lands and remember that's not Disneyland.
Yes.
Oh, wow. Which is to say, thanks for being on this wasteland with us. I think it's really hard to exist in 2026 for a lot of reasons. And I think often of my friend who said, thank God we have art during this time. Could you imagine how hellacious making it through the day to day would be if we didn't have music, if we didn't have friends to talk about studying art together? Which is to say, thank you for studying art with us. I'm so grateful that we have a space to do this and we have a community to explore art and to explore what it means to really be a person in this world living through that art. I'm so grateful to do it with all of you. And thanks for being here, Alyssa, on the Daydream Show. It was so fun talking with you.
Yes. I was the best. There's no place I'd rather be than just yapping it up by this virtual campfire.
Virtual campfire is exactly. Wow, Alyssa, I put virtual campfire on a vision board like 4 years ago, and I cannot believe, like, I'm looking at it right now, jaw open. I'm gonna send you a photo. I can't believe somebody has said that phrase back to me.
Oh,
That's
yay!
really fun.
Well,
Well, thanks for joining the campfire, y'all. We're about to put
yeah,
on a film. Alyssa, what were you gonna say? Sorry.
no, we're gotta move the campfire to the
Yeah, it's
other.
the show. The
But
campfire is the show.
speaking of life, death, rebirth cycles, let's talk about pomegranates and their color.
It's true. It's true. The one thing I have to say about the color pomegranates is that it is a weird esoteric film. It is so beautiful. If you want to join us and you're listening and you don't have a way to get into the green room, you can do that at wendingcircles.com. there's a link to get a ticket there. And if you need help getting in, you can always email us at wendyandcircles@gmail.com. And there was one other thing I was going to say. Oh, yeah, I'll leave you with this little tidbit. Wedding Circles, we've been watching films for a while now. And when we first watched The Color of Pomegranates, wow. Let's just say we're about to watch the commentary on the film. If you want to watch the film, that's tomorrow. But watching the commentary is very helpful because it is a very esoteric film. The first time we watched it, I was like, wow, I don't know what just happened, but I liked it. Um, and then approximately 3 weeks after we screened it, Charlie XCX had a Instagram, like a private Instagram account for Brat 360 Brat, and she posted, I believe, her first like major photo dump included photograph movie stills from The Color of Pomegranates. Again, 3 weeks after we screened it, which, you know, coincidence, but it was great because everyone was like, oh my gosh, she's holding an apple. And we were like, those are pomegranates. So if you like knowing what's going on in pop culture, start watching some esoteric films with us. And thanks for being here. We're going to get started in the film and we'll see you next time. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.